Letters from Spain. Letter 16. The wonders of Spanish food. Hello! I'm back, and the world is back here with me. Bernie Sanders is winning the primaries. Who would have thunk it? Harvey Weinstein is finally going to jail. And the coronavirus is in Italy now. And maybe in many other places that we don't know about yet. Who knows? Well, to be honest, I'm a little bit concerned about what's going on in Italy. If for admittedly selfish reasons. On Thursday, my brother and I are going to Poland, and our return flight has a stopover right in Milan. So I hope that's not affected. I don't really want to get stuck in Poland. Or in Milan. Or really anywhere. Anyway, in this podcast, I'm going to talk about something I should have talked about a long time ago, and that's Spanish food. Now, food is a big part of any culture, and of course, Spain is no exception. In fact, I think Spanish people in general are particularly proud of their food. You know, they think that Spanish food is the best food in the world. And you hear Spanish people, they go on vacation and they come back, they're like, oh, thank God, I could have Spanish food again. And, this can strike an American as very funny. Since, there's a lot of amazing things about Spain: history, culture, architecture, art, even the weather. The list goes on. Food doesn't probably even make it into the top 10 attractions for people visiting Spain. In fact, many Americans visiting Spain don't even like Spanish food that much. And this was true of me too. Like many visiting Americans, I was absolutely ignorant of what Spanish food would be like before I came here. I had the vaguest notion that maybe it would be something like Latin American food, but that's totally wrong. In fact, it's actually kind of amazing how totally insulated or uninsulated Spanish food is from the food of its former colonies. In Great Britain, curry is everywhere. Everyone loves curry. In Scotland and England and Wales. And in the Netherlands, they eat a lot of Indonesian food. But in Spain, it's not like they eat a lot of Mexican or Argentinian food. They don't eat chili peppers. They hardly even eat corn. Think about it. Mexican food is more popular in New York than it is in Madrid. Also kind of crazy. I mean, it's true. The ingredients of the Americas are a big part of Spanish cuisine. For example, potatoes. Spanish people love potatoes. But, so do Irish people and German people. So it's not really like Spanish cuisine is any more similar to Latin American cuisine for this reason. Well, suffice to say that Spanish food isn't like any Latin American food that I've tried, either from Mexico, El Salvador, Argentina, Peru, or anything like that. I guess it is a little bit similar to some Cuban food I've had. But anyway. Well, in fact, my most persistent sensation when I first started eating Spanish food was that it was sort of plain and bland. Before I moved to Spain, I was eating a lot of Chinese food. So I was used to intense flavors: salty, savory, spicy. When you eat really good Chinese food, the effect is overwhelming, In fact, I think it's fair to say that American food in general could have this overwhelming quality. Whether it's something is covered in melted cheese, or whether it's drenched in barbecue sauce, or just packed with butter and sugar. American food is not known for subtle flavors. Now, Spanish food is very different. For one thing, there's not a lot of spices. Besides salt and black pepper, the most common flavoring is paprika. Spanish paprika is really, really good. It's smoky and rich. Delicious. But it's not exactly overwhelming as a flavor. In fact, I think you could say the whole Spanish philosophy of food is diametrically opposed to what you often find in, say, Chinese food, or at least the Chinese food that I've been exposed to. In the case of Chinese food, often a sauce gives all of the ingredients a uniformly wonderful flavor. Oh, it's so good. But in Spanish food, the focus is a lot more on the ingredients themselves. The flavor of the individual meats and vegetables and whatever seafood you got going on there, they're not covered up. You're supposed to enjoy the subtle flavors of each component, or at least that's the idea. So as a result of this, to an American, Spanish food can seem simple, plain, and even kind of uninspiring. In America, we expect intense flavors. And in a restaurant in America, we expect food that you probably wouldn't be able to make at home. Whether it's too complicated to make or it uses ingredients that would be difficult to find. But this is definitely not the case in Spain, where most of the stuff that you could order at a restaurant is extremely simple. A sautéed chicken fillet with French fries, or a fried egg with a vegetable medley, or a plate of sliced ham. In fact, a lot of the food that Spanish people eat in restaurants is almost exactly what they would eat in their own homes. It's crazy. It's simple food. It's as simple as it could be, honestly. On the plus side, when you eat at a Spanish restaurant, it doesn't usually leave you feeling bloated and sick and disgusting like so much American food does. Well, here you can get some idea of the Spanish conception of food from the case of Jamie Oliver. Now, in case you don't know him, Jamie Oliver is an English celebrity chef. He has a good cooking channel on YouTube that I like, although his recipes are usually kind of over the top for me. Anyway, a few years ago, he released a paella recipe, and you know what paella is, the famous Spanish rice dish. Well, he released a recipe that uses chorizo, the typical red Spanish sausage. And the Spanish people freaked out. It was a whole social media campaign. They denounced him on every platform available. He was scandalized and made fun of, and it was kind of hilarious. The whole country rose in rebellion against this foreigner handling an iconic Spanish dish, his unholy hands, his just making a travesty of tradition. And it was all about the chorizo. Now, of course, chorizo itself is Spanish, so it's a Spanish ingredient in a Spanish dish, but traditionally, paella is made with seafood, mixed seafood, clams and squid and so forth. Or it's made with chicken and possibly rabbit. Or sometimes paella is made with both chicken and seafood, and that can also be very, very good. There are many other variations on paella, but the important thing is that paella is never made with chorizo. Spanish chorizo is very greasy stuff. It's full of fat. And it has a strong flavor. Anything you put it in gets just covered in pork grease. Okay? So any chorizo that you put into paella could potentially overpower some of the more delicate flavors. And I'm thinking here especially of saffron, which is traditionally used in paella, which has a fairly delicate flavor. Would you want to have the flavor of saffron mixed with the flavor of pork grease? I don't know. Well, anyway, to an American, or I suppose to an English celebrity chef, this is not how we are used to thinking about food. For us, the more the better. How could you make a dish worse by adding a delicious sausage? It doesn't make sense. And, I'm sure Jamie Oliver's paella has a stronger flavor than the traditional variety. But this is just not the way Spanish people approach food. The point is not to have, an out of body experience and to see God while you're just eating this food. The point is to have high quality traditional flavors that you can savor, and you know how to savor them because you've been eating them all your life. So, anyway, the food culture in Spain tends to be a lot more conservative than it is in America. Well, since in America we have almost no allegiance to any recipe at all. The only thing that matters is that it tastes good, and for us, for something that tastes good means that it has a lot of fat, salt, and sugar in it. That's basically what it comes down to. But in Spain, as in many parts of the world, there are traditional rules that have to be followed, right? You can't just call any rice dish paella. If maybe you can call it rice with chorizo, and that's a different thing, but you can't call it paella because paella has very specific rules for what makes it a paella. By the way, fun fact, the Spanish newspaper El País looked into it, and they found that originally, or our earliest records of paella being made did use chorizo. So maybe Jamie Oliver wasn't so off base after all. But anyway, I already mentioned that most Americans really have no idea what Spanish food is. They expect to come to Spain and eat tacos. And this is especially shows when journalists talk about the Mediterranean diet, right? So you have these stories where they talk about, oh, Spanish people, they're the healthiest country in the world. They're so healthy. Why do they have such long lifespans? Oh, it's the Mediterranean diet. They eat fruits and nuts and vegetables and fish. And, they don't eat a lot of carbs and meat. This is why. So you'd think that the country is full of people, eating salads and munching on, I don't know, mangoes or eating handfuls of almonds or something. But that is very far from the case. Let me dispel this image of the healthy eating Spaniards with one example. The most typical dish of Madrid is called cocido madrileño, and this is what it consists of: sausage, blood sausage, pancetta, ham, beef, chicken, all of this, and, globules of fat and bones, chicken bone, no, well, really a ham bone, boiled in water for several hours, like 6 hours. And then all of this meat is served with potatoes, chickpeas, and cabbage. All right, so does that sound like a light meal to you? Because it's not. You feel like you could fall through the floor after you eat it. And by the way, the other typical meal of Madrid is called callos a la madrileña, which is cow intestine stewed with sausage and bacon, another very light, delicate Mediterranean meal. The truth is that Spanish people, they eat a lot of meat. I mean, pork is fundamental to Spanish cuisine. Aside from all the many varieties of jamon, Spanish ham, which is succulently good, and I highly recommend you try it if you come to Spain. After that, there's the holy trio of chorizo, panceta, and morcilla. Morcilla is blood sausage. This triplet of ingredients are used as the basis of so many Spanish dishes, most of them Spanish stews. You have, just the other day I had a potato dish. It was basically mashed potatoes with chorizo, panceta, morcilla. That's what it made. That was the dish. And it was really good. My understanding is that pork became intensely important to Spanish identity, basically because it was what distinguished Christians from Jews and Muslims back in the old days when Spain had a diverse religious population. So anyway, if you had pork, you knew you were a Christian because Jews and Muslims don't eat pork. And this is why nowadays it's just, everywhere. It's such a huge part of Spanish cuisine. It's treasured in all of its varieties, from a pork chop to little bits of fried pork fat called torreznos, which I don't really like. But anyway, There's scarcely any part of the pig that is not used. And all over Spain, the annual pig slaughter called the matanza is a big festivity. It's all the neighbors get together and they slaughter the pigs. Well, Madrid isn't the only place that has heavy food, by the way. It's everywhere in Spain. Maybe the capital of heavy food, the Spanish capital of heavy food, is Asturias. And the two most famous dishes of Asturias are fabada asturiana, which is a bean stew with, guess what? Chorizo, panceta, and morcilla. And then cachopo, which is sort of like cordon bleu, but it's two thinly sliced pork, almost like a schnitzel, two thinly sliced bits of pork with cheese and ham on the inside, and then the whole thing is like as big as a laptop or something, is breaded and then fried. So it's heavy. But there's heavy food everywhere you go. The last time I was in Extremadura with my brother, I tried to order a plate of vegetables to go with our big plate of pork chops in a sauce, but the restaurant literally didn't have any vegetables to offer us. I asked anything, and they said, nope, you could have fish. Another time when I was down in Andalusia, where you would think the food would be lighter since the climate is so hot, the closest thing a restaurant could offer us to a salad was a plate of cheese. So where are all these fruit and vegetable eating Spanish people? You don't see them at the restaurants. You don't see them on the street. Maybe they're just all eating extremely healthy meals in the privacy of their own homes and no one ever sees it. I mean, my girlfriend certainly doesn't eat healthy. She eats worse than me. So why do Spanish people live so long? Well, one way that Spanish food is definitely healthier than American food is the popularity of seafood. They eat lots of fish, squid, octopus, shellfish, you name it. Even in Madrid, which is right in the middle of the country, there's a ton of seafood. In fact, some Spanish people say that Madrid has the biggest port in the country, basically because seafood is shipped in from all the different coastlines of Spain. And so Madrid really has quite a large variety of seafood on offer. My personal favorite, as far as Spanish seafood goes, is pulpo gallego, or Galician-style octopus. It's prepared so that its texture is not at all rubbery or chewy. Instead, it's tender and succulent. It's served with, again, very simple. After they cook it, they serve it with olive oil, paprika, and salt, and that's it. I also really love the fried cod that you could get in many bars around the center of Madrid. And calamares are, of course, always good. If the Spanish diet is definitely healthier than the American diet, I think that the popularity of seafood plays a big role. And it's also worth remembering that Spanish portions can be about half the size of American portions. So, obesity is comparatively low too. Well, that's the basic rundown of Spanish food. It's the best I could do in a single podcast. But I still haven't explained why I've come to like Spanish food. If you want to grasp the beauty of this cuisine, consider one of the most typical Spanish dishes, the tortilla. Now, this has nothing to do with the corn tortillas from Mexico that you're used to using for tacos. Instead, a Spanish tortilla is a potato omelet. Look up a picture of it. It looks like a potato and egg cake almost. There are three basic ingredients: potatoes, eggs, and onion. And in fact, a lot of Spanish people like their tortillas without onion, though I think that's totally crazy. So that would make it only two ingredients if you don't count salt and oil. But anyway, like so much Spanish food, it's as simple as it can be, but when you make a good tortilla, there's nothing as satisfying. Everyone has their own opinion. Some people like it with onion, some people like it without onion, some people like it dry, some people like it. I've seen people put pesto in it and oregano, and I like it when the texture is when it's not like fully cooked, when the inside is gooey, when the egg has not fully hardened. I think it's absolutely delicious, almost decadent. Uh, in fact, I'm so passionate about the Spanish tortilla that I think it should be embraced worldwide, much like pizza. Because it's easy to make, it uses cheap ingredients, it's filling, and you could eat it for breakfast, lunch, or dinner. You could even put it on a sandwich. What more do you want from a dish? All right? Well, that's all I have for Spanish food. Thank you.